Thank you for being with us on BigSueMedia.com, and let's talk a little bit about the campaign as a whole. A few days to go. How's it been going?
It feels great. We're in the final push, and in these final days we're doing what we've been doing all along, which is travel in the state in my beautiful 95 Buick LeSabre and trying to meet as many people face to face as we can. And we've got a debate coming up, and we're going to do a series of get out the vote rallies in the closing days.
You hear, we hear, just about everywhere, we have to do something in South Dakota to keep the youth here or get them back here. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. What about the aging population? If you go to the House of Representatives, what can you do about the senior population? Because they too are really still the future of South Dakota.
Yeah, senior issues have been big in this campaign, in fact. And of course, we're a state with an older population, so it's really an important topic. Medicare has been a key topic in the campaign. And of course, one difference between my opponent and me is that I favor a plan to preserve and strengthen traditional Medicare. And my opponent has voted for a plan that would essentially privatize it and give seniors a voucher to buy private insurance. The problem is that the voucher would leave seniors with an extra $6,400 in out-of-pocket costs. So I think by that measure alone, it's a bad idea for South Dakota. And I've laid out some specific ways that I think we can avoid that approach and keep traditional Medicare that folks are familiar with, but just improve its efficiency so that it stays strong over time. And then one other topic that doesn't get quite as much attention, but which is also important, is Medicaid. I think we need to be willing to invest in Medicaid, partly because that is what pays for many of our nursing home residents' care. And my opponent, again, has a different view. She's voted for a plan that would turn it into a block grant and essentially cut Medicaid. So I think that would be harmful to our seniors, as well as to many others who depend on Medicaid.
Let's talk about one of the big industries in the state, agriculture. Where do you see it going? What can you do to keep it growing stronger?
Agriculture is huge in South Dakota, always, and it's especially important that we're talking about this in this campaign because we're in a drought. We just went through a terrible drought, and we're also in a year when the Farm Bill expired, which is, to me, just the latest example of this dysfunctional U.S. House of Representatives. The Senate actually came together in a bipartisan way and passed a pretty good Farm Bill that on the one hand would cut some spending so that we get serious about deficit reduction, but at the same time keeps in place a strong safety net for our producers, both on the crop side and on the livestock side. The U.S. House, where my opponent is part of the leadership team, not only didn't pass a Farm Bill, but they refused to even bring the Farm Bill up for a vote. And my opponent was decided about whether to push for a vote on the Farm Bill for a long time. And because of all that indecision and just the lack of willingness to work together, members of Congress left town to go home for a 7-week recess to campaign for their re-elections, and they let the Farm Bill expire. So basically they said to farmers and ranchers, hey, sorry, you're on your own. We've got to get home and save our own hides. But that is an irresponsible way to govern. And one of my themes throughout the campaign has been to bring a more cooperative approach to Congress, where we're willing to work with others on both sides of the aisle to try to get some things done, including a Farm Bill.
Being in South Dakota and only having one lone representative to the House of Representatives, why should voters send Matt Varilek to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, well, you're right that when there's only one representative, the job, I think, is even more important. And I'm running because, number one, I want to tip the balance back in favor of regular middle-class folks and folks that are trying to work their way into the middle class. I come from Yankton and Tabor originally, and have had to work my whole life. I started out doing things like delivering the newspaper, picking rocks for farmers, washing dishes, and all that. And so I know what it is to work hard, and I'll be a good voice for middle-class families in South Dakota. Secondly, I want to bring a different leadership style, where we're willing to work with others, seek common ground, and try to make progress and break this logjam, this dysfunction in Congress, which I think is a result of a my way or the highway attitude that you see from too many members of Congress. And then finally, South Dakotans shouldn't have to wonder whether their one voice, like we said, whether their one voice is even showing up to do the job, whether our one voice is being heard in committees. And so I'm running to bring back the bipartisan tradition where folks know that that one member of Congress is in there aggressively speaking up for South Dakotans. So if South Dakota chooses me, they'll get a member of Congress who works just as hard as they do.
Matt Varilek, thanks for being with us on BigSueMedia.com.
Thank you, my pleasure.